choices. We all make them, and some of us flow down the path of least resistance, only making choices when absolutely necessary. Others of us are more active decision makers, completely unable to allow anyone or anything to keep us from achieving what we want to achieve. Most of the time I fall into that first category, the path of least resistance. Here are a couple of the more important choices that I've made. Story one. In the summer of 2001, I had just returned from this magical place we used to call the video store. And I pulled up to my girlfriend's house, and we were just sitting there for a moment while a car pulled up beside us and blocked us in, kind of strangely. A young man got out, started to ask for directions. I looked over at Erica. I looked back, and I didn't see that person, but I saw a gun right here in my face. And this young man said to me, "Give me your wallet." And I said, "It's in the back seat." And he said, "Open the door." So I opened the door. By the time he got in the car and had the gun at the back of my head, he couldn't find my wallet, so he said, "Drive away." So I started driving away. And after a few moments, he did actually find that wallet, only to discover that there was a single $20 bill in there. And I could immediately sense this quiet sense of disappointment in him, that this high level of risk had only yielded $20. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't want him to make the next move, that I had to make a choice there, what was going to happen. So I said, "Hey, there's an ATM right around the corner. Let's go get you some more money." Story number two. In the summer between 9th and 10th grade, I made two choices that have made a huge impact on who I am. The first one was that I decided not to play football my sophomore year. I loved football, but I was kind of slow, kind of small. It's a bad combination if you want to play football. And so I transferred into drama. I took a drama class instead of football. The second thing that I decided to do, almost on a whim, my high school started offering Russian, and I thought, that sounds cool. So for my mandatory foreign language requirement, I decided I'm going to take Russian. So two really small decisions that have had a huge impact on my education, my career, and the relationships that I have, and ultimately kind of the person that I am today. So these are the choices that have had a huge impact on me. And what are the takeaways from these two stories? The first one is that I realize I'm pretty good at acting under pressure, that I make decent choices when I need to. And I also learned that the subtle, small choices really shape who we are, and that ultimately we're the culmination of many, many small choices rather than those big events that sometimes we like to define us, whether they're good or bad. All right. Americans also make choices. According to the American Time Use Survey, which is conducted by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, Americans spend 2.7 hours per day watching television and movies for pleasure. And then juxtapose that with the 20 minutes a day that are spent reading. I read another article from CNN about a year ago that said that Americans get about 10 hours of screen time a day. So, I'm not really good at math, but you sleep about 50 hours a week, you work about 40 hours a week. Some of that you're getting screen time, some of you're not. You have to eat, you have to bathe occasionally, and you have to go to the bathroom and things like that. That doesn't leave a lot of time. So that 20 hours a week that we spend watching TV and movies is pretty significant. And so what are the takeaways from this one? The first thing is that it's really sad that nobody reads anymore. And I mean that as someone who's trained in literary studies and has kind of approached film from that perspective, that interdisciplinary perspective. And the second thing that I realized is that I, not you, might have the most important job in the world, teaching students how to analyze images. And this isn't something I've come to realize until recently. When I tell people what I do for a living, I usually say, yeah, I teach film, And then, we have this short conversation. What does that look like? And pretty much it ends up with something like this. So you watch movies with students, you talk about them a little bit, and then they pay you for that. And I say, yeah. And I walk away feeling a little bit sad and depressed and deflated. And I'm guilty of doing this. But I've realized more recently that I have a huge opportunity. The fact that my students are spending 20 hours a week doing exactly what I want them to be doing, doing what letters professors cannot convince their students to do, right? And so in this context, it's easy to see the real value of visual literacy and media literacy in a world where we are all constant consumers of film, television, and video in various formats. So although the language of film is primarily visual, I think it's truly the most synthetic art form. This is a scientific term that maybe I'm going to butcher, but this is my definition of what synthetic means. It's not real or naturally occurring. So it takes many people to work on a film to make a lot of choices for it to work properly. And it also requires synthesis, the combination of two or more things. So in real terms for film, this means that film combines the performing arts, like theater, dance, and music, with visual arts, like painting, sculpture, photography, and as well, on the storytelling side, certainly the literary arts is an important part of that too. So as passive viewers, which most of us are most of the time, we have literally thousands of hours of experience with this synthetic art form. And we feel the way that filmmakers want us to feel. And our connection with images, sounds, stories is visceral, immediate, and ultimately emotional. But as we step back and attempt to analyze this cinematic language, or film grammar as it's sometimes called, it becomes a little bit more difficult to parse out those individual components and how they work. So the trick to isolating those elements is to slow it down, watch it multiple times, and applying a specific lens for each viewing. And then the individual formal elements eventually start to make themselves clear. So at this point, I want to break down a small, short clip from a film that I've seen too many times. I love showing it. It's the film we watch at the very end of class, and in spring semester when everyone's gearing up to go to the beach, I make them watch Jaws. So this is from the 1975 Steven Spielberg film Jaws. So here you're going to notice there's a long introductory shot. By that I mean there's no edits. The camera is moving through space. We're following little Alex Kittner here. There are countless children on the beach. But his mom says, Alex Kittner, so we know immediately. Alex Kittner, this is a kid we need to remember, right? So this is a classic plant. Then the camera is going to continue to move. We still don't have any cuts, any edits, and it's going to take us to really the focus of the scene, our protagonist. Notice already that he's in a relatively close-up shot. Here we have more establishing shots at a longer camera distance to give us context about where we are, how these people are inhabiting this environment. Alex standing out with his yellow raft and red shorts. Notice the quiet, serene beach feeling. You'll notice the ebbs and flows that will increase in intensity. Notice this as we start looking at Chief Brody a little bit more closely. We have a series of what are called jump cuts, where we jump forward in time. We jump forward again. That's jarring. That's supposed to make us feel a little bit uncomfortable, right? We know that something is happening, and here we have a series of false alarms. Right? Intensifies. And then we get a release, right? This is what horror films are great at doing. Intensity, 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 and then we relax.
Hey, Mike,
I love talking about this shot because it's an impossible shot. This is from the point of view of Chief Brody. He's looking out into the ocean. We have that depth. It's impossible for that man and that person in the water to be in focus. You noticed maybe a fuzzy little line. So this is a double exposed film, kind of primitive special effects. So Chief Brody constantly being bombarded with questions and concerns about parking spaces and picket fences. You'll notice the intensity start to pick up here as all the kids enter the water, splashing, playing. We have a few moments here of comic relief.
It's cold. We know all about you, Chief. You don't go in the water at all, do you? Some bad hat.
So, at this very moment where the energy on the beach is increasing, Chief Brody's relaxing. Pretty soon, you'll see a series of quick cuts with children playing and splashing in the water, foreshadowing the shark attack that's about to happen. What? This is Jaws. We have a little bit of a foreboding moment here as the dog that we saw at the beginning is suddenly missing. We're leading up to a really amazing shot called a dolly zoom. And you'll notice right after this iconic John Williams score and this low-angle shot take us into the attack of Alex Kittner, we're going to see the camera distort the background as Chief Brody sees the attack. So this is accomplished by moving the camera forward through space and zooming out at the same time, so that you're really moving a little bit, but what it does is it distorts that perspective in the background. So here, we have the culmination of the scene. If you remember that first opening shot, that long tracking shot that started right here at the edge of the water with little Alex coming out of the water. Here we have Mrs. Kittner frantically looking for her son. Final shot is the raft. So a great mirroring moment here. So it's really kind of the perfect scene. And you know, this was the first summer blockbuster. It's a big budget Hollywood film, Steven Spielberg's really first big opportunity. And you see that even in a film that, you know, critically perhaps isn't the most important film in the history of the world, we see the touch of a master's hand here just on a single viewing. And of course, like I said, I've watched this a million times, so I've had an opportunity to break it down. So I'm fortunate because my students have trained themselves through thousands of hours of experience viewing film. And they recognize the nuances of narrative, language, camera movement, composition, light, color, sound. They even succeed pretty well at analyzing themes and identifying prominent ideologies that are expressed in films. At the beginning of a semester, they rarely have the vocabulary to thoughtfully analyze what they're viewing or explore the full implications of the messages they are receiving. But we make a lot of progress as we realize that every cinematic choice is deliberate and calculated and has an impact. So I think I actually do have the most important job in the world. And in a time of fake news, alternative facts, viral videos, and lives that are staged for Instagram, visual literacy is a critical component of actual literacy right now. And in a film and in life, choices have an impact. A film and a life are mostly defined by small choices, with a few major transition points that can change a trajectory. And we are fortunate to encounter students at one of those points of transition where real change can actually happen. Thanks.